Welcome to our Onramp Apprentice AMA. We're so happy to have people joining us here to speak with some of the apprentices who have successfully come through our program. They've converted to full-time software engineers at different companies, and I know they're really excited to answer your questions. So just to let you know kind of how we're going to structure this, we're going to do a round of introductions, and while everybody is introducing themselves, I'm going to ask that if you have questions for the panelists, please put them in the Q&A box. So I'm going to be monitoring the Q&A box throughout the AMA and kind of putting the questions out to the panelists popcorn style. So whatever questions you have for them, I will be going through that and bringing them up. So please use the Q&A box versus the chat box, and I will repeat that again after the introductions for any latecomers. So I'll go ahead and introduce myself first. My name is Dana. I'm the head of talent at Onramp. If you have gone through any of our application processes before, you may have met me in an interview. If you're applying to work at Coinbase, you might meet me in an interview. I love working with the apprentices. It's so exciting to me to get to meet people and to see them go through from candidate all the way to fully converted software engineer. And so working with Victoria, Joel, and Megan in that way has been an absolute delight. So I'm going to go ahead and let them introduce themselves. I'm going to hand it off to Victoria, and then when you're done, you can just pass it on to the next person.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Really excited to join the session today. So I'm Victoria. I'm an Onramp alumni and currently working at Twitch. I have non-traditional IT background, so was self-starter Android developer. And yeah, basically learned by myself using various online resources. And yeah, luckily was able to find amazing opportunity with Onramp and later transition to full-time position with Twitch. Yeah, this is shortly about me. Joel, would you like to go next?
Sure. Hey, everybody. I'm Joel. I'm also a former apprentice. I currently work at SiriusXM Pandora. Similar to Victoria, I also I didn't have background in software engineering prior to working here. No college. I learned mostly using YouTube and some Udacity free courses. Eventually, I qualified for a Grow with Google scholarship, and it helped me pave the way to get here to where I'm at today. Yep, that's the gist about me. And Megan, go right ahead.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Megan Mcdevitt. My first career was as a musician. I'm a bassist and music teacher, and I started working with electronics. Probably read this already in my bio, so I'm kind of just repeating it. But started working with electronics to perform, and was using this program called Max MSP, and I just kind of caught the coding bug. It's not exactly coding, but it's very similar in the way you think about it. And yeah, started learning online, and then did a boot camp, and then spent more time working on my job search and increasing my skills, and then got this great opportunity with Onramp, and now I'm a full-time software engineer at Blend.
Great, thank you so much. For anybody just coming in, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A box, and I'm going to go ahead and just present them popcorn style to the panelists. And you can ask them anything about the application process at Onramp, what the interview process was like, either with Onramp or at the companies they work for, what it was like going through the training month prior to going on site at their companies, what it was like integrating, as an apprentice at their software companies, the mentorship that they received, any advice that they have, anything is fair game. These are people that have gone through the process that hopefully all of you are here to ideally go through as well with the Coinbase opportunity. So please feel free to use their experience and use them as a resource to help get your questions answered. So that being said, I'm going to just start putting these questions out, and please, Megan, Joel, and Victoria, just jump in and answer them as you see fit. So our first question is from Aiden, and it is, what are each of your experiences with breaking into software engineering?
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, please go ahead, Megan.
Okay. It's hard for a little while. you probably know that already. But so yeah, it's an emotional roller coaster breaking in, because you feel like, you don't have the experience to show on your resume. And you can get a lot of rejections, and it's very upsetting. But I've found that, like, my experience was that I did a lot of projects and I did some volunteer work. I got lucky enough to get like a contract work thing through somebody I knew. And then I tried to like just really talk about that in all of my interviews and on my resume. So I mean, it's kind of a broad question. Hopefully I'm answering it for you, Aiden. But yeah, the experience was that I spent about 7 months after boot camp crying, a couple times a week, and then it paid off.
Yeah, as for me, it was also like kind of challenging. And what I found like useful for me is like trying to find various resources where sometimes I realized that, for example, one resource doesn't work for me. So I just tried different approaches and tried to visualize problems so I could understand everything like better for myself. And also it was like sometimes hard for me not to give up when I thought that like it felt like almost impossible for me to continue or like to solve some challenges. So I think that the most important thing is just to continue, and also also actually to get used to the idea that you have always to like learn new things. It's kind of like normal right now for me. So you're just constantly learning, and this is also something that helped me as soon as I realized that actually this is quite okay right now for me. So this is like reality. Yeah.
Same experience for me. I can resonate with both those experiences. It took me about 4 or 5 months of applying. I kept hitting that brick wall where people say they want experience. They found someone, more applicable to the position. And it wasn't until the apprenticeship that I got my foot in the door finally. To get to where I am today, but it was difficult. It was difficult for sure. It wasn't easy. And just like Victoria said, I would just keep practicing and polishing your skills for whenever the opportunity does arise, that you're ready for it.
I'm going to share in the chat here really quick. I wrote a Medium article on this topic, so feel free to check it out.
Ooh, thanks for that, Megan. There are so many good questions popping up here. There's also a couple that are Onramp specific that I'm going to answer at the end that are kind of about the application process. So I'm just going to hold those until the very end, and I'm just going to keep bringing up the questions for the panelists. This is a great one from Javon. What transferable skill do you feel most helps you transfer from your previous field to software engineering?
I think I can start with this. I think one of the most applicable skills for me was my soft skills, to be honest with you. I had an extensive experience in the restaurant industry. I was a waiter and bartender for a long time. I worked in customer service for banking. I was a banking mortgage loan officer, which was terrible, but all customer facing kind of situations. So I was able to practice my communication skills and person to person, one-on-one, group settings, whatever the case is. And that transferred over to software really well because of being able to communicate with teammates or people you don't know, maybe cross-team communications. What I learned when I got here is that most of the job is communication based. I think there's a misconception that it's like coding all day, but I feel like it's pretty evenly split with communication, and I think it's really important.
Great. The next question has to do with the process itself coming through Onramp. How long was the interview process, and what would you say was the hardest part of the interview process?
I think the hardest part was the project. You have a week. That's like once you get sort of to the last round, you have a week to complete a project. I'm assuming it's still the same for this one. And yeah, I had to learn TypeScript. I had never used TypeScript before, or Postgres. So I tried to learn as much as I could in a week, and I didn't sleep very much. So that was probably the most challenging part.
Same for me, yeah, the project as well. For me personally, it also overlapped with traveling from Europe to US. And like the last day when I had to submit the project was actually my travel day. So yeah, and even though if it wasn't the traveling anyway, I would say that the project was the hardest. And just had to learn a lot because like, even though I did something similar before, there were some specific requirements that I wasn't familiar with, so had to learn along the way.
Great. Next question from Deshawn. Did you have all the skills required when applying for the apprenticeship? If not, how did your experience with Onramp help you succeed?
I would say that I didn't have all the skills required. Like I couldn't code a full project like maybe ready for the app store or something like super smooth or elegant that way, but I can get a working app together. Maybe not super pretty, but those are things that could be polished. Those are skills that could be learned and polished, after the process, through the process. I think joining as a junior engineer, the expectations is that, you do need polish. You do need to learn a lot. So I feel like that's expected, and I feel like that's a part of the process. So no need to be super stressed out about being like a fully refined, have all your skills refined already. Like that will come with time.
Yeah,
Next
I think
Go ahead.
sorry, I just kind of wanted to echo that too. Like, I think there are so many situations on the job and in getting the job where you don't know everything that you wish you knew ahead of time, and you have to learn it kind of quickly. So I think like the biggest skill to develop is like just having sort of a method or a way you're going to handle learning something pretty quickly without getting too anxious.
The next two questions I'm kind of smushed together because they're similar, from Miguel and Jennifer. So please explain the mentorship experience of your apprenticeship and how it helped you gain confidence in breaking into tech. And to tack onto that, like what kind of projects did you work on during the 4 weeks of training through Onramp?
Can you say the first part of the question again? Sorry. I don't see.
Yes, it was. Please explain the mentorship experience of your apprenticeship and how it helped you gain confidence in breaking into tech. So I would say, what the training month was like, and how that helped kind of prepare you, to go into the apprenticeship period.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the training month mostly because I got to work with the other apprentices. So we all worked together to create an app. And we basically expanded one of our projects, one of the other apprentices projects. And so the nice thing about that was that we all got to learn from each other. And we also had a mentor who was just like very supportive and encouraging, and didn't say like this code is terrible or anything. So I feel like I got some confidence from like working on this group project on GitHub and then having a supportive mentor from Onramp.
As for me, so what I learned, so mostly it was like working as part of the IT team, and I learned a lot of like additional skills, for example, like for using new tools, kind of like, for example, like GitHub or Figma. So I didn't use these tools a lot while I was learning by myself. So this was really helpful for me to get familiar with these tools prior to starting like real job. So that was definitely helpful. And yeah, I was working with my colleague with on Android application. And of course, like mentorship was great. Actually, Joel was one of my mentors, and it was fantastic mentorship like experience for me. So yeah, I really appreciate this like supportive environment that we were into. So yeah, it was really, really helpful later on when I like realized that actually a lot of the skills I was able to use in my like real job situations.
I think the next question will speak to a lot of people. Have you ever dealt with imposter syndrome? And if so, how did you face that?
Constantly. I think it takes a little bit of practice to quiet down that voice in your head. And from the beginning of my journey till now is something that still happens. But if you stay persistent, like there's no problem. When I was learning, I'd run into something that I couldn't figure out, couldn't debug, and I'd spend hours on it. But it ended up being that there was no problem I couldn't get past. You just needed some more learning, some more researching, and there was always a solution. There's always someone out there to help, someone to reach out to, and you just got to keep reminding yourself sometimes. I don't think imposter syndrome goes away, but you do get better with dealing with it, I think.
I love this next question. Any tips for handling rejection?
I'm not sure that this is a good tip. What I decided to do was that I was just gonna like let myself be sad and get upset about it for like the afternoon and just like take the afternoon off if possible. And then the next morning I'd get back to it. That's kind of, that was my way of dealing with it. That might not work for everybody.
Yeah, I would also add to this, maybe it's too standard, but anyways, like never give up on like trying, and don't be afraid, like if you, for example, like fail coding interview or something, like evaluate this experience anyway. So this is great experience, and only like later you can, at least it was for me this way. So only later I realized that actually it really helped me. For example, I learned what I didn't know, and so I could prepare better for the next one. So even like negative feedback, or like even if you fail, it's in general, it's really positive for you and for your growth.
This question is, I have a full-time job. How do you balance your time at work while wanting to give your best effort with this application?
For me, I think it wasn't the question at that time, because I didn't have full-time job when I was applying. So I tried to like dedicate all the time I had on like learning and applying for like positions.
I did work full-time while trying to teach myself for a few years. And it's not easy. And I'm not someone to kind of give that cliche advice, like you got to just put in the hours and the hard work, because I think sometimes that's not healthy to kind of like promote that lifestyle of working too hard and you'll get it. Because I think you need to be kind to yourself too, mentally, emotionally. It's a delicate balance that you have to keep, but I would try to block off time. I think blocking off time is important. Like put on the calendar an hour or two a day, 4-hour block on the weekend, and to make sure you're making time for it, because it's easy after work or before work to oversleep or just be too tired and then put things to the side. So I think my bit of advice would be to block off time.
Next question is, do you learn different tech stacks prior, during, and after the apprenticeship?
Yes, all three.
Yeah, this question I'm seeing come up a little bit. So, these apprenticeship opportunities are available for people with less than 6 months of professional software engineering experience, and they're specifically created for those with non-traditional education backgrounds. So someone who's self-taught like Victoria or Joel, somebody who went to a boot camp like Megan, or somebody who maybe went to a community college and has like an associate's degree in computer science. So these are specifically for people who do not have 4-year CS degrees. There are plenty of opportunities for that type of candidate. These opportunities are made for those that are coming from those different backgrounds. So yeah, we don't expect you to know every single language in the stack. We upskill you during the application process. We upskill you during the training month. And then of course you continue to learn once you're on site at the partner company. And apprenticeship implies that you are there to learn, that you're going to continue to learn. So we're definitely not looking for someone who already knows it all, because you probably would have a lot more than 6 months of post-training experience if you already were a master at all of these languages. We're looking for people who are eager to learn, great communicators that are passionate, about continuing, to grow as a software engineer. And pretty much facility with JavaScript is what you need to get through the application. So if you're looking at, that Go is mentioned or TypeScript is mentioned and you don't have those languages yet, don't let that deter you. The HackerRank assessment is mostly in JavaScript. So the next question is, I guess these questions are kind of similar. If you could go back and do something differently with relation to getting into software engineering, what would that be?
For me, I would just do it earlier. I wouldn't wait for so long, because I got master's in finance before that, and I was kind of hesitant, should I take the new career path, or maybe I should just continue with what I already know. So that was kind of challenging question in my head all the time. And right now, looking back, I wish I just really decided it several years ago.
Yeah, I think same for me. I don't think I would do anything really differently, because I'm really happy with where I ended up. So yeah.
Next question is, what kinds of things did you work on as an apprentice?
I used to get a lot of bug fixes, but they were usually user facing. So they were all kind of really cool things that I can show a friend or family member and be like, hey, this thing here that's working, I fixed that. It was broken before. So which is pretty cool. The occasional project, feature work, but nothing ever too overwhelming. And if anything ever was a little bit too big, there was tons of mentors and people to help, tons of teammates to help with that stuff. That was for my case.
Yeah, when I was just embedded on my team as an apprentice, yeah, started with a couple of bug fixes. Then I worked on a new feature with a more experienced engineer. And then toward the end, I was working on a new feature, a small feature, pretty much on my own, where obviously I needed help, but I was sort of in charge of finding help and then delivering on it. So kind of progressed.
For me, it was similar, also some starter tasks and bug fixes. And later on, I got a project that was related to developing new feature that was almost all my apprenticeship period long. And yeah, it involved actually a lot, not only coding, but also communicating with different other teams, designers, backend engineers, creating technical design documents. So it was kind of a really huge project for me.
This question is going to be not necessarily relevant to the on-ramp process, because again, these apprenticeship opportunities are specifically created for those without 4-year computer science degrees, but I know all of you did apply other places, so maybe you can speak to this based on those experiences. How did you navigate the conversations about the lack of a degree?
I think, oh, sorry, Joel.
Oh, go right ahead. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I think there's something that everybody here has that is a transferable skill. Like we were just talking about communication, um, problem solving, any like soft skill you might have, like you already have a skill that you developed in another job or with other experiences. So I think like really focusing on that was really helpful for me.
For me, I read this tip somewhere and I received good feedback from it, or good responses from it, was just to kind of directly ask, maybe towards the end of the interview, when you're kind of like, any other questions? Do you have questions for me? Blah, blah, blah. I would say, is there, I forgot how I would word exactly, but it was something along the lines of, is there something about my lack of college education that we can talk about? Is there something, can we discuss it? Can we, does that bother you? Is there something I can do to, something along those lines? Like I would kind of straight up ask, and then any concerns that they did have, we can discuss, we can talk about it, and then alleviate anything.
As for me, I tried to mention that at the beginning of the conversation. For some reason, I felt like better this way. I just told that I don't have traditional background and I don't have, like, for example, like a lot of years of experience, only like personal projects. And also that resonates also with what Megan mentioned. I tried to highlight some soft skills that could be transferable. And I tried to connect these skills with what is also required in IT industry. For example, I mentioned that like I love being part of the team and like being like team member. And then because it's also important, for example, in IT sphere when you have to collaborate with teams. So I tried to find these connections and highlight those.
The next question is, how long did it take to get into your first position as a software engineer, and what were the benefits of using Onramp?
For me, it took almost 3-4 years, I think. Well, Onramp gave fantastic opportunity because I often got rejections because of lack of experience and lack of standard education. So I sometimes got like, I often actually got rejected when I just sent the resume. So I even didn't get the chance to speak to the representative of the company. So Onramp gave fantastic chance to kind of like open the door to be able to get into this sphere. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it took, let's see, I probably was like sort of casually learning to code online, sort of not like necessarily trying hard to switch careers for a couple of years. And then when I started the boot camp, I like really started in earnest, and it took me like just over a year from the beginning of the boot camp to getting my job with Blend or the apprenticeship. And Onramp like is great because it gets your foot in the door. It's like, this company is looking for somebody with a non-traditional background because they value that. And so you can go in with like a little bit less imposter syndrome, although it's still there, but you know that they know what to expect from you.
Next question is, was this opportunity worth it? Are you fulfilled to be in the role you are now?
Heck yeah.
Yeah, heck yeah, I agree.
Definitely.
It's just amazing. Like I can't, sometimes I just don't even like believe that I'm here. Sometimes, like I wake up and I'm like, oh, I do this. This is my job still. Like this is real. I have such amazing mentors and I've met so many amazing people. I can't even put it into words, to be honest with you. Yeah, it's awesome. It was worth it.
Let's see, what part of the application or during the apprenticeship did you feel the most confident and the least confident?
I think I felt the most confident on the initial technical assessment and the interviews with Onramp, and the least confident probably like the first week of the apprenticeship when I realized how good the other apprentices were.
What advice would you give yourself when you started the apprenticeship?
I would say don't be afraid to ask for help. I would just keep telling myself that constantly. I probably have to remind myself every day. I used to always have this feeling that I don't want to sound dumb or seem or sound like I don't know what I'm doing, but or fear of what other people think of me. But the reality is the longer I waited to ask for help, the longer I was just hurting myself and my own productivity. Like, your teammates are there to help. And I feel like a team and a manager wouldn't take on an apprentice if they weren't expecting to help and groom that apprentice. So it's other people's job too, is to help you out. So I think I would go back and tell myself to ask for help more often and just not be scared to ask for help.
What successful habits or things did you apply during the apprenticeship that you think helped you convert?
Yeah, I think definitely kind of like to go off of what Joel just said, like asking questions and being vocal. I think I'm not entirely sure everything that went into it, but I think in terms of blend, and my manager in particular, he wanted to see that I could take feedback well, and like continue to improve. So like he was just looking for growth. He was looking for me to like incorporate, criticisms or like feedback of various kinds. And I think that was the most important thing, just like to make sure your trajectory is this way.
Do you still work on personal projects or freelance?
For me, currently, no, unfortunately. I don't have so much time right now to focus on personal projects. Actually, there is still a lot for me to learn on my full-time job. So currently focusing all my resources just to basically to do my primary job.
Same. I feel like the first, and certainly like throughout the apprenticeship and even like into the full-time job, I was so tired at the end of every day just because my brain was like working so hard to like wrap my mind around what I was learning every day. So yeah, I haven't been working on anything on the side as of now.
Same here. Not really. I do have ideas, and I like have a little note where I jot down ideas of things I want to build. But after staring at code all day, having the energy and the mental capacity to look at more after work, it takes a lot. So me also not right now.
There's a lot of people asking about whether or not you used the training plan during the application process and if it was worth it. So I'm going to go ahead and put that out there. Joel, it might be a little bit of a further reach for you to remember since you went through that a while ago, but if any of you want to speak to the value of the training plan, sort of like the free resources that we offer for you to just review and make sure you are comfortable with what's going to be covered on the HackerRank assessment during the application process, please feel free to comment on whether you use that and whether or not it was valuable.
Yeah, as for me, I used this training material, but for me it was the nuance that I actually was familiar with some of the topics mentioned before, and even I used the same kind of resources. For example, I used, as also Joel mentioned, some free Udacity courses that were also like linked as a resources. But anyway, even though I went through this course prior to all the application process, it was still useful for me just to recap, to take a look again, like what's the most like important and what might be kind of like required for this particular application. So it was useful for me.
Yeah, I also used it. I also think that anytime there's an application and you could get a job from it and somebody says you should use this training plan to prepare, then you should do it.
Love that advice, Megan. The training plan is optional. You absolutely do not have to go through it. But again, we get a lot of questions about like, hey, what's on the technical assessment? How do I prepare? The training plan will tell you what's on the technical assessment, and that will help you prepare. So it's not required. You know, if you're looking at a module and you're like, I already know how to do this, you don't have to go through it. But if you see something on there and you think, well, maybe it would be worthwhile to spend an hour or two brushing up on this prior to taking the technical assessment, which you can only take once, then we certainly recommend taking that time. You know, this is a competitive process. We do get a lot of applicants. And so I see a lot of people asking like, how can I stand out in the process? Just taking that extra time to prepare and really showing us what you're capable of is the way to stand out. The next question is, how is your work-life balance once transitioning into the training month?
I feel like the training month and throughout the apprenticeship, there was, since it's hourly, or at least it was at Blend, you kind of have like a set schedule. You certainly like could keep working on it outside, but I tried to just stick to the schedule. It's like 8 hours with a half-hour lunch and a couple of 10-minute breaks. I think it's really healthy to do that.
I agree with the similar work-life balance. I think it's important to make sure you take your breaks and you're not like sitting down all day staring at the computer. No one's really micromanaging where I'm at. Like everyone's really trusting. You know, they trust you to get your work done, and if you do, then there's no issues.
Yeah, same for me. I kind of looked at this kind of like it's a real job, so I approached it the same way. And I also took some breaks, as I felt that if I don't take the break, even like 5-10 minutes break, I'm less productive. So there are some moments during the process when I feel that I really need this break right now. So yeah, I just took the break when I needed.
Yeah, that just happened to me yesterday. I was like trying to figure out this, like what this code was doing at work, and I could not find like the source. And I like had lunch and took a walk, and I came back and it was like I immediately found it after like an hour of like racking my brain. So highly recommend breaks.
Next question is, do you receive mentorship in the apprenticeship? And whoever chooses to answer, maybe you could speak a little bit about the mentorship available during the training month and then the mentorship available during your time on site during your 6-month apprenticeship period.
Yeah, sure. During the training month, we had a couple really of Onramp mentors available, like one main one, and a couple of other ones. And yeah, I think like there was like a good amount of like direction for the project, and then like they were available to answer questions as they came up. And it's sort of similar. It was sort of similar on my team. I had a mentor on my team. Then I also sort of had a mentor that I was working on a feature with, or like a more experienced engineer that sort of like ended up being more of a mentor too. So at Blend, I think like there is an official mentor, but it's like a little bit more loose. It's a little bit more like ask as many questions as you want, here to help. And there was like a lot of great availability for that. Yeah, so.
What's your favorite thing about the work you do?
For me, it's the thing that the work that I do actually affects a lot of people. Like a lot of people see what I do. So this is one thing. And also like I personally love like seeing also like results of my work. So I like the part that like I write some piece of code and then I see how it basically the visual effects of this. So I really enjoy like these two moments about my work.
Yeah, same. I think working on software that's used by millions of people is really awesome. And keep trying to keep the user base happy is kind of like is always like a motivation. Like it always stings me when I see like a bad Google Play review or something, you know. Like I'm always like, oh, we got to fix that. So it's cool.
That's funny. My company isn't as user facing as yours. I mean, it is, but not at the same scale, I think. But I love, I like the mission of Blend, which is that we are making mortgages and other types of loans more accessible and easier. And so I like one, knowing that I'm helping towards that. And two, I just really like how much I'm learning all the time from everybody I work with.
Any tips for staying diligent in a remote environment?
Oh yeah. There's a learning curve. Just like there's a learning curve when you start learning how to code, how to program, there's a learning curve with trying to stay productive at home. Well, luckily in the pandemic, lots of articles came out, blog posts, and suggestions. But you got to find what's right for you. I mean, I use the Pomodoro technique, which is like you said, a timer where you're just like super focused, no notifications turned off on the phone, and you're like hyper focused for like little a window of time, 20 minutes to 40 minutes, whatever it is. And then when the timer goes off, you stop what you're doing and take a break. We talked about mental breaks before, and it's so helpful. 5-10 minute break, then you restart the timer, and then another focus, take a break. That's one technique. Also, having a nice little work area to separate from the rest of your home helps mentally to shut off when it's like after work time. So if I didn't have that, I'd probably be at my computer all day and all night. So you gotta watch out for that too if you're working remotely.
I also use the Pomodoro method, so everything Joel said.
Pomodoro method is amazing. There's like free online timers. If somebody hasn't used that before, just Google Pomodoro technique, and there's lots of little websites that will help you set up your schedule using it. I would love for y'all to answer this. The question is, did you find the essay part of the application difficult? And the reason why I would love to have you answer this is, I will say, as somebody who has read a lot of the essays for past cohorts, this is often a place that people gloss over or feel is unimportant. Some people feel that the technical assessment is the only important part of this application process, and that's not true. We really do look at every single aspect. The essay is an opportunity for us to get to know more about you beyond your technical skills. And I can tell you that the partner companies that we work with, when we ask them, what's your ideal candidate? Like, what are the qualities you want to see? Technical perfection is never mentioned. They're looking for somebody who can communicate, somebody who's inquisitive, somebody who can take feedback, somebody who will ask questions if they need it. And so we can get more of an idea of who you are and how you operate through the essay questions. So I cannot stress the importance of putting a little bit of yourself into the essay questions enough and taking the time to answer them in a way that's thorough. That being said, I'm just going to put that out to the panel. Did you find answering those difficult? And I'll add a little question of my own. Do you have any tips or tricks for creating a good essay answer?
I don't specifically remember what I wrote for the Onramp essays or like what I did, but I do know that like a lot of companies I was applying to had questions similar to that. So I was compiling them all of my answers in a sheet like refining them every time and like adding more detail as I started, doing more things and adding some projects. So I had like a whole document of writing that I could use for all of my applications. So I did a lot of like recycling. Sometimes you get a question that you haven't gotten before and you have to start from scratch, but that'll probably help you for like a future application if this one doesn't work out, or like even in an interview, you can like sort of think about your story and like how you transition or how you're transitioning and like what you did before. And I think just like embrace your uniqueness, which sounds like cheesy, but I mean like in coming into a new industry, most people in that industry haven't already had like a whole other career before. So I think it is really useful to highlight that.
I agree. I think the essay is a really important place to stand out. I think about the traditional process of applying for a job, and it's just like this list of qualifications, degree, languages, there's no real, you never have an opportunity to tell your story when you're applying for a job. And this is that opportunity to stand out. And I would take advantage of it.
I agree with what was mentioned. And also I remember that I was like thinking about the essay a lot. I remember that I had like draft initially, and then I came back to the draft and adjusted some parts. And I was thinking like whether I should include like more kind of like personal story or more my professional experience. So it's about like finding the balance. What do you want and what do you think like is better for you to put on the essay? But I think it's great that there is such an option, because you can like show your soft skills and also your personality, not only your, for example, like coding skills.
How do you build relationships and network while you're an apprentice? Was it difficult, or were the full-time employees open to building relationships with you?
Yeah, it wasn't difficult. I think everyone on my team in particular was really welcoming, and when I needed to communicate with people on other teams, they were really open as well. I think people like to, in general, help out when there's like a new person and help them get onboarded. So yeah, it wasn't difficult for me.
Megan's article mentioned using public challenges like 100 Days of Code to practice and build community and get noticed. How important do you think social media is for software engineers?
I don't necessarily think it's important, but it was helpful for me to get over that like feeling of I don't want to seem stupid, like that Joel was talking about before. Like I think like if you're just learning online and in an open way, it doesn't have to be on social media. It could just be like, you have a group of friends, or like there's somebody that you can say like, here's what I learned today, and actually articulate it. That was really helpful for me. And like it just happened that like Twitter and LinkedIn were the space that I did that. But I don't think it's necessarily like you could maybe build a network, maybe like know someone who knows someone that might help you. But I think for me, like the 100 Days of Code thing was about getting over that fear of sharing and just like being willing to be open about learning.
Let's see here. This next question, I love this one. Changing careers is scary. How did you handle self-doubt or the fear of failure?
Still working on it. Yeah, just continuous. It takes continuous practice, just continuous time and catching yourself in those thoughts.
Yeah, I think like if you're getting past like a round of interviews, once you hit that point where like even if you're not getting the jobs, you've like passed a couple of interviews, then like your confidence starts building more. So once you kind of get that rolling, and you will, the more you work and the more you learn, like you will definitely get there. But yeah, I think like once you start getting that, at least for me, once I started getting that feedback, I was like, okay, I'm on the right track. So that helped.
How's the diversity in the tech industry? I know you can't maybe speak to the industry as a whole, but maybe at your own companies.
As for Twitch, we have a really diverse like culture, and there are like people with different backgrounds and cultures. And yeah, I think the company is really diverse.
Same at SiriusXM Pandora, and that's what I love about this program too. It kind of, I feel like it's always adding to the diversity at these companies that have apprenticeships. And that's why I'm a huge lover of this program.
Yeah, agreed. I think Blend is getting more and more diverse, and making efforts to get more and more diverse. You know, we have like a lot of employee resource groups too, and there's like an Eng Women team that meets every couple weeks, and there's a diversity, inclusion, and belonging team that is like dedicated towards having like a more diverse community within Blend and helping like outside of Blend as well.
And then I think we'll just do one more question, because then I want to go through and answer some of these like application specific questions for people. We've kind of already answered this in a way, but what was the most challenging aspect of your apprenticeship?
I think it's been kind of reiterated a few times, but like the self-doubt and just getting, it's a muscle. I feel like the brain and controlling that thought is a muscle. The self-doubt, it gets easier with time, but never goes away. And that's probably the biggest hurdle all the time. Throughout my whole journey from beginning to end, there were always times where I would be running into a brick wall working on something, and I'd always think maybe I'm not smart enough for this, maybe I'm not meant to be a software engineer. And every single time it was not true. Every single time I got past that hurdle, whatever it was. But I still have that thought sometimes, even now, even today. But then you catch yourself, and then I tell myself mentally, like, I'm here for a reason. Like, you're all here for a reason. You just got to remind yourself sometimes.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge for me was that like in learning how to code, I had only worked in really small projects that were either like mostly mine or just like small group projects. And then sort of like when I looked at Blend's code base, I was like, oh my God, this is huge. It's really daunting. I think the biggest challenge was like getting used to like reading a lot of code that you don't understand entirely and has been written by lots of different people. So that was like the biggest transition, I think.
Yeah, for me, it's kind of the same. I also remember like when I first saw the code base, it seemed like so huge for me, and like I couldn't really like find all the connections. It was like, where do I start? And also the feeling that I need to like get used to this code base and using this, and also in parallel to learn how to use tools that are used within the company, and also like communication with all the different departments, because I honestly didn't expect that. I thought that I will be given like specific tasks and I will be just working on those tasks. But actually the role includes much more. So this was kind of like surprise for me. And this was at the beginning something that like kind of like overwhelming and challenging for me to get used to this whole environment and to handle this.
Going to ask just one last question for each of you to answer. What advice would you give to someone coming through this process to succeed either in the application, interview, or the apprenticeship?
I think like sort of to reiterate something we've already said, but like in a more general way, don't skimp on any of the steps. Like really like do the training plan. I mean, you know, you could skip it, I guess, if you already know everything really well. Like do the essays, really be really thoughtful about the essays and about the coding challenge, and like put your all into the project. I think that will help a lot. And then with the interviews, know what you want to say about yourself ahead of time.
I think for me, I would say be patient. I think patience is key because it's not always an easy process. It's a long road. It's a long, windy road, especially if you're self-taught, boot camp. It's just be patient with yourself. Be patient with the process. Don't let rejection and the negative thoughts get to you. It just keep. It was a long part for me. It was 3+ years of teaching myself and then eventually applying. It's a long process, not as long for some people, but I think it's important to just be patient.
Yeah, totally agree. And I would also add, like, as I mentioned before, like never give up. Don't let some failures stop you on this process. And also, like, don't be afraid to step back if you feel that you're stuck. Just take a step back, and that would help. And also, this kind of like works for me really well. So if I don't understand some topic, I try to use different sources for that. So I like watch videos, read some articles, or like some free courses. So sometimes the topic is explained the way that maybe it's harder for you to understand, but like researching what is additionally mentioned about this might help you like get better at this, and also like get some better understanding.
Thank you so much. And I think the only application specific question that I haven't answered here, a lot of people are asking, like, when do you hear? So we contact everybody. I am the one that contacts everyone to let you know one way or the other. So if the deadline has passed and you haven't heard from us, we will send an email if you weren't selected for this round. And I also want to make it clear that if you applied for this opportunity and you're not selected, you are welcome and encouraged to apply again. We have several placed apprentices that applied more than once, and they were selected on their second time. I think one even on her third time. So you're always welcome to apply again. And in terms of when you would know if you were accepted as an apprentice, there's a couple different phases to the application process. There's the application deadline, which is November 9th. There's the finalist project period, which I'm sorry, offhand, I don't have it, but it's on the FAQ at the end of the roll page. So if you haven't been notified that you're going to interview before then, you can assume that you're not a finalist. And then there's the day that Coinbase will actually select, the apprentices, which again is on that FAQ timeline. So if you just scroll to the bottom of the roll page and expand the first FAQ question, all of these dates are there. And just know that we will be in contact. If you choose to unsubscribe from our emails after the deadline passes, you will not see any follow-up information. Sometimes that happens and people think that we're not getting in touch with them. I also just want to let you know that at the end of the application period, we will not be sending you a ton of emails. We send you reminders during the open applications, just to nudge you to complete, but we do not spam you otherwise, aside to let you know when new opportunities come up. A few people asked if there are going to be other opportunities this year. There are. We have a few more to announce in the coming months. So if you have started an application or joined our mailing list, you will be notified there. You can also always follow us on Twitter or LinkedIn to know when new opportunities are opening up. I know we're at time. I just want to say thank you so much to Victoria, Joel, and Megan. For me, it's really fun to see you all here in one place because I've worked with you individually in very different ways. It's so exciting to see all three of you, placed in these companies and really thriving as software engineers. And I know that our attendees are very grateful for you to answer these questions. This recording is going to be posted on the Onramp YouTube channel. You'll also be able to access it on the Onramp homepage under events. It'll be under past events. So probably tomorrow I will get that up and you can click on that and forward it to anyone who might have missed it. Thank you so much to everyone. We're looking forward to seeing your applications come in. Thank you again to the panelists and wishing you all a beautiful afternoon.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Luck, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.